One of the great highlights of Jujutsu Kaisen lies in the extraordinary abilities used by the protagonists and villains. Cursed energy, in its essence, seems simple as it is born from negative emotions such as sadness and anger. These feelings are common in human society, which means practically everyone possesses some level of cursed energy, even if minimal. However, the series' great brilliance emerges in the next step, when sorcerers channel this energy to create innovative techniques that go far beyond simple explosions of power. They employ concepts from mathematics, philosophy, and even paradoxes to develop incredibly complex abilities. Want to know what the most complicated abilities are and, of course, a detailed explanation of each one? Then let's dive into the content. Let's start with the power of Gojo Satoru. His unlimited power, called Limitless, is fascinating at first glance. On a basic level of understanding, it seems to be the ability to manipulate the space around him. However, this is not entirely accurate. Gojo can slow down any object approaching him thanks to the infinity that exists between him and the object, essentially stopping any attack. This power is inspired by Achilles' paradox, formulated by the Greek philosopher Zeno. In this paradox, Achilles and a tortoise compete in a race, with the tortoise starting ahead with a small advantage. No matter how fast Achilles runs, he can never overtake the tortoise because each time he covers a distance, the tortoise has already moved a bit further. Complicated, isn't it? Well, it's a paradox. Besides Limitless, Gojo has other complex techniques like blue, red, and purple, which essentially allow him to pull, push, and destroy anything. With his mysterious 6 eyes, which he has had since birth, Gojo reaches an unparalleled level of cursed energy and innate mastery. It's clear why he is known as the supreme sorcerer of Jujutsu Kaisen. Let's talk about the power of Black Flash. Used by Yuji Itadori and other sorcerers, Black Flash is peculiar because it is technically one of the rare curse techniques that any sorcerer can use. Like innate domains, binding vows, or veils, it all comes down to the sorcerer releasing cursed energy in an incredibly short period, 100,000th of a second. To get an idea of what this means, imagine dividing a second into 100,000 parts. A physical blow must release energy exactly in this tiny interval of 0.00001 seconds, amplifying its power by about 2.5 times. Black Flash is a power amplification technique that allows the sorcerer to significantly increase the impact of their punches and kicks. When a character uses this technique, their approach to combat changes drastically. At first glance, Black Flash may not seem so complex, but it is confusing because the story itself chooses not to go into much detail about it. There's much more to this technique than meets the eye. Next, let's talk about the projection sorcery of Nabito Zenin. Nabito Zenin, head of the Zenin family, has an impressive technique that allows him to turn 1 second into 24 frames. With this, he can map out a predetermined set of movements using his field of vision. While the technique is active, anything touched by Nabito's palm must obey the rules imposed by the technique, or it will be frozen for a second. Imagine this: you can take a video of me and divide it into 24 frames. In the next frame, you can change my movements. It's an incredibly unique and innovative power, something I've never seen in any other series I've watched. Undoubtedly, it's a powerful ability, but what makes it truly terrifying is the clever way Nabito uses it. Another of the most complex techniques in the series is the reversed curse technique. Few sorcerers can use it due to its complexity. The reversed curse technique involves such an advanced concept that almost no sorcerer can fully comprehend it. In simple terms, it's pure mathematics. Multiplying a negative by a negative results in a positive. That's exactly how reverse techniques work. Curses and sorcerers multiply 2 different types of cursed energy, which are negative by default, to create a positive reaction. Thus, a force once used solely for destruction can now be used for creation. An example of this is Shoko Yeri, the doctor of Jujutsu Kaisen, who uses reversed cursed energy to heal people. This technique transforms a destructive force into a regenerative ability, demonstrating the complexity and hidden potential in cursed arts. Let's talk about the position exchange, also known as Boogie Woogie. This ability, used by Aoi Tadu, may seem simple on paper. Basically, whenever Tadu claps his hands, he can swap positions with any person or object in an instant. It's easy to understand, right? The simplicity of this technique is deceiving. Although it's easy to comprehend, it's practically impossible to fight against Tadu because of this ability. He can switch with random objects and even clap without changing anything, creating the possibility of feints during a fight. Even Sukuna, with his years of experience in Jujutsu, admits that this is a technique impossible to adapt to. In theory, position exchange seems simple, but in practice, it is extremely difficult to face due to the unpredictability it introduces into combat. Let's talk about an ability that, even when explained, remains quite confusing: Kento Nanami's Overtime. This salaryman has a surprising technique. His binding vow is called Overtime and works as follows. Nanami limits the amount of cursed energy he can use during his official work hours, putting himself at great risk. However, once he exceeds his normal shift, his overtime begins and Nanami's cursed energy increases drastically, granting him an incredible power boost in combat. But the real brilliance of Nanami lies in his technique called Ratio. This innate ability allows Nanami to divide anything, like an opponent's arm, into 10 parts. No matter if he hits the third or seventh part, the attack will be much more powerful. However, this division is not as simple as it seems. These seemingly arbitrary numbers are related to the golden ratio. The golden ratio is an irrational algebraic real constant obtained when dividing a line into two segments, resulting in the familiar number 1.618. It is said to be the number used by God to create the world. This ability is simply amazing, and now you know how it works. Let's talk about puppet manipulation, a truly fascinating ability when we analyze the Jujutsu High Director, Masamichi Yaga. Yaga creates cursed dolls that follow his orders, each with a specific function and a core that acts as a sort of brain and heart. Similarly, Kento Muta, also known as Mekamaru, has the ability to control puppets from a distance using invisible threads. Both techniques involve the manipulation of cursed corpses, but Muta is an extreme example of heavenly restriction. Born without his right arm and the lower parts of his legs, he cannot expose himself to sunlight or moonlight without suffering severe burns. Muta experiences extreme chronic pain, which he describes as if every pore of his body is being constantly stabbed. In exchange for all these limitations, Muta has a vast amount of cursed energy, which he uses to control his numerous puppets of various shapes and sizes. This ability allows him to fight from a distance, keeping himself safe while manipulating his puppets to attack and defend. Let's talk about the Your Miracles technique used by Haruta. Haruta is a seriously disturbed individual who loves to pick on those weaker than him. However, he always manages to get away with it somehow, and this is due to his cursed technique called Your Miracles. Your Miracles is an incredibly curious technique and works on autopilot. Haruta doesn't even know when it is activated. Basically, the technique stores all the little miracles that happen in a person's life, such as looking at a clock exactly at 11:11 or filling the gas tank with a perfectly rounded number, among many other possibilities. These little miracles are stored as small marks under Haruta's skin and are used automatically to help him in times of need. The nature of this technique is incredibly vague and obtuse, not making it clear when it is activated or what counts as a miracle. Moreover, it is fascinating how someone can use a cursed technique unconsciously. The simplicity and complexity of this ability make Haruta a unique and intriguing character, showing that even the most unusual techniques can be devastatingly effective. Let's talk about Beast Summoning, a cursed technique that covers two precious abilities. Technically, we are addressing two different curse techniques, but they essentially work the same way. We can mention here Fushiguro's technique, which is also a summoning ability, but not as complex as Takuma Hino's. Takuma Hino, when dressed in black and covering his face, becomes a shadow or a medium for these beasts, able to summon them into himself and use their abilities. He himself becomes a summoning talisman, which raises the question of how this is possible. Let's talk about Idol Transfiguration, a special grade curse used by Mahito and his insane ability. Mahito doesn't care about human life and frequently kills or transforms people for his own benefit. The impressive number of deaths associated with Mahito is one of the most unique aspects of the Jujutsu Kaisen series. At first glance, Mahito may seem human, but he is actually a special grade cursed spirit, probably the personification of human hatred. His cursed technique, called Idol Transfiguration, allows him to deform his own soul and the souls of others. This means he can transform humans into monsters, pseudo-curses, tiny dolls, literal walls, projected swords, or anything else his twisted mind can imagine. Mahito can transform himself and others with just a touch, creating aberrations that defy any existing natural aspect. These are some of the most complex techniques in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. If you have any questions about other techniques, leave them in the comments. Who knows, I might make a part 2 of this video. If you enjoyed this video style, don't forget to subscribe to keep receiving our content. With that said, see you in the next video.